And so then we went into Afghanistan in early 2002, and our unit, the operations in Tora Bora had already happened, so it was somewhat quiet, but we continued to get fire from rockets into some of our bases. And so we were concerned about a couple of our bases because they were along the Pakistani border. And so there were some issues with whether or not the Pakistanis knew what was going on with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda forces that were firing on our bases there. And so I'd gone out to these two bases that are on the Pakistani border to make sure everybody understood the ROE. And soon as after I'd gone out there, we suffered one of our first casualties there. Now, the way that the rockets had gone off there was, in a precursor to how creative our enemies could be. They had taken bottles of water and they had frozen them. And so when they froze them, then they cut off the tops and the bottom, and they'd put weighted piece of metal, and then they'd set that bottle of iced water where the sun would hit it when the sun would come up. And so the sun would come up, it would melt the water, the pieces of weighted metal would touch, that would complete a circuit, and then the electrical circuit that was hooked up to a battery, which would fire off a rocket that was pointed at the base. And so obviously they would set these up in the middle of the night. And again, this is just precursor to how creative they could be. When people are just sitting around all day trying to figure out how to kill Americans, they're going to be very creative. And so that's what they were doing. Well, of course, so we would send out squads at night to try to get the guys who were setting off these rockets. And so a squad came up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and they called back to the fire base and they said, we've got some guys who are digging and we want permission to engage. We think they're bad guys. And the person, trained on the rules of engagement, responded and said, well, do you see any weapons there? And the answer back was, no, we don't see any weapons. And so the person in charge said, well, try to get a little closer, see if you can see some weapons. And so they crawled forward a little bit further. They called back again very quietly and said, listen, we don't see any weapons, but this is a wadi we've received these rockets from before. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. There's no farmers out here trying to do anything with these other than set up rockets. We know these are bad guys. There's no other choice here. And the person back at the base said, well, it could be, but if they don't have weapons, maybe we can capture them, maybe we can get intelligence. Maybe they're being forced to do this by the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, because we know that's one of the tactics, right? So tactically, under the rules of engagement, well, if they certainly could be bad guys, that you should be able to shoot them. Let's just see if we can get a little closer and see if they have weapons or not, whether we can take them and interrogate them, find out who they're working for, because these may be small fish. Well, so that was both a tactical decision and a rules of engagement decision, as many of these things are. But as this squad tried to get a little closer, unfortunately the bad guys got off the first shot. And Sergeant Stephen Checo took 2 bullets to the middle of the forehead. And he was a 21-year-old from Brooklyn, New York. He had a loving sister, had loving parents, and that was our unit's first casualty.